what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It's
Gets
gross.
the people going.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're gonna bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7½ minutes after that, you're gonna bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes the fuck out.
You got a bad attitude and you don't listen.
Oh, yes. There will be blood.
It is not the violence that sets a man apart. All right, it is the distance that he is prepared to go.
Ever notice how you come across somebody once in a while that you shouldn't have fucked with? That's me.
What the fuck else would you do this job? Cocaine and hookers, my friend.
Welcome to the Max Ordinate Podcast. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be today.
Max Ordinate Nation, what is up? Jeph, we got
What's going on?
Get your ass out of bed. Just doesn't matter. You need more stem cells.
Okay, to be fair, I haven't been in bed. I've been feeling great. I've been doing shit I shouldn't be doing. My elbow hurts one day and it feels great the next, and I've been feeling fantastic. And then exactly what was supposed to happen, which is another part of my back started getting healed, and my back went out 2 days ago. And luckily I just put the baby down and I hit the floor and I couldn't move for like 3 hours. And so I'm just recovering from that. So I can still barely walk. I got a lot of just muscle and like lateral pain. I can't get my hips into extension. They're just stuck in flexion. So I'm just kind of hunched over. But I drug my ass off the couch to come hang out with you and talk cool stuff as long as I can sit in this chair.
Well, we're gonna talk some shit today.
Oh, we should. Oh.
Looking at sharing my screen here. I'm going to start us off with a video just because I ran into this video and I instantly just wanted to get thoughts on it. Like, I know.
Well, before we get into that, I don't want to skip over the fact that last time I saw you, you were trying to not die in a typhoon.
Typhoon's over, man. I went surfing. I went swimming.
All right.
It was bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like discount how bad the typhoon was. What was the crazy part is like you got this tiny little island that we're on, and the typhoon came from the east. But as it got closer to us, it was supposed to be a direct hit, and it ended up passing south of us. So then it was headed towards Taiwan, but then it like ping pong balled off Taiwan and came right back, and then we got the direct hit. And then So we got hit on the East Coast, hit on the West Coast, tiny little island. I don't know, the beginning of the typhoon hit like on a Monday. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, here I am in my house. So I like went down to the beach, checked it out, filmed some stuff. And then that night, the power went out. And I was like, fuck. Like, what do you do? Like, what can you do? You can't go out and fix whatever power line's down or whatever. So, like, fine, no power. Now I've got lights in the house. I'm eating ramen. Refrigerator stuff's going bad. Like, just big learning experience, right? And then a few days go by. East Coast typhoon is over, and I get power back for like an hour, and then it's gone again for the entire time. So I think total I had 8 days of no electricity. You got used to it. I mean, battery banks, the car still works. So like if you needed to charge anything important, you could charge it with the car. But outside of that, it was just, there's certain times where it got pretty bad. I did drive around. I think on the second typhoon, I drove around. I was trying to get like views of the ocean and what like the waves were looking like. Waves were huge. There were certain spots where the road was running along the seawall, and waves or whatever had basically pushed enough sand over the wall that the entire road was just sand.
Oh, Jesus.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna drive through this. And I'm like, you know, slowly creeping through this sand, and then you can feel the car kind of like wanting to sink, and you're like, don't stop, just don't fucking let off that gas, but don't gun it. Like there's a fine line there. So I made it out. I was just imagining myself like getting stuck in the middle of a typhoon on a sandy road, and like, how do you get out of that? And how do you explain it? Hey,
and how are you that guy that blocked that entire road because you're the dumbass?
But yeah, so the typhoon's over. The water visibility is still crap. I went and swam yesterday. Can't see anything. But it's gonna get better. This weekend should be a lot. It seems like the wind is starting to calm down a little bit. Did you see what's happening in Maui right now?
I did. I saw that yesterday. I mean, I don't know if the fires and stuff are over, but I just saw yesterday's fires, and wow, that whole beach is gone. Like that whole
town is gone.
That whole town is gone. Like it's insane.
Yeah,
and I don't know how many people died. Last I saw it was 6, but that was yesterday.
There's still people missing, man. I just can't believe how they had the high winds coming through there, which high winds and fire, from being a California like yourself, it's just a bad deal, man. And
yeah, and I think people also don't get that. We know it here from California, but when there's big storms elsewhere, hurricanes, tropical storms elsewhere, those suck all the moisture out of the air. So I think that's what they had that storm that was actually sucking the moisture out along with the high winds. And it was just a recipe for disaster. So, man, that's an absolute bummer. And what's crazy is, you think about it, like, you just imagine these things happening in, I don't want to say third world countries, but like areas that aren't city, and areas that are not so densely populated. But that's not like that was in the sticks. Like that was on the beach in Maui. And just like those fires up in Oakland, like that's in the middle of the city. Like fire and nature don't give a fuck. It'll find a way.
Yeah. So bad deal for people living in Maui. You can't replace that stuff. I'm sure they're going to rebuild with the amount of damage that's there. I mean,
you level and start over. I mean, there's nothing you can do.
Oh my gosh. It's insane, but it's going to take a while, and that's a pretty hot, not just for the people that live there. I think saw like 100,000 people are residents there. But the amount of tourism that Maui gets is devastating,
for sure. I think, and I could be totally wrong, but somewhere like Maui, which is similar, I would say, in tourist dollars to, like, if I could compare it to something like Fiji, that's like 80% of their revenue, right? Like the money they bring into the country, or the state, the city. So, and that's not something that you can replace, at least until everything is rebuilt. So no one's going to Maui until everything's back, right?
I was going to bring that up. Like, I see people, Maui is a big topic right now. And I saw some people post about it, like praying for Maui. I want to go help. And then I saw somebody else say, I think it was just Facebook, like, oh, it's really sad what happened in Maui. That place is really special to me. That's where I got married. And we're supposed to go there on the 18th. I'm hoping we can still go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not going to be fixed in a fucking week, dude.
It's not even there, bro. Like,
nothing there. Like,
I know.
Way to only care about yourself.
I know. Holy shit. But yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, you hate to see that. And it's off topic. I think about shit that I guess maybe other people don't think about, which is large scale disasters like that. Not only does it affect them, but you have all these insurance companies that are now obviously going to be having to pay out, and and it's this whole big like logistical nightmare, but that affects everybody else also. So, you know, not only does it affect Maui and those business owners and those residents, but, you know, because of all the riots over since 2020 and on, and all those insurance companies that paid out all these damages, I, as a California business owner, am having trouble with my insurance rates because some people aren't carrying certain policies anymore. So now you have, again, anytime there's a big disaster like this in Maui, not only does it affect them, but you will see trickle down because insurance companies don't eat shit. You're going to see other rates, other markets that'll get shut out because they're not going to want to cover and pay for them. So it, as a whole, it just sucks. But it'd be interesting to see how they bounce back from it over the next, 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So I'm gonna share this video, okay? And we're gonna talk about it. Here we go. Let me find it. All right. So let me press a little play button here. And what this is a video of I saw it. It's it's the MDT videos that they put out about training and techniques and like do this or don't do that.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna play it. Shoot standing like this. You should stop. What you need to do is square up your legs to the gun, shoot, blah blah blah. And
they do put out some decent videos that I find interesting to watch. I don't know what the value is on some of them, but
yeah, so it's not a bad video. I wish they would have shown what the recoil looks like when you are standing like that versus having the position that they say is correct and then showing the recoil, right?
100%, right? Don't tell me how to do it. Tell me how to do it, but then also show me why I need to do it this way and show me the repercussions of doing it the wrong way. So I have, as a athletic person, the ability to wrap my head around how to do it properly and train my body to do it right.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it goes back to that, not just don't tell me, but show me. But like, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And you have a guy there being filmed telling you, don't stand off center or, canted to the rifle. You need to square up. But why? Like, show us why, because it's in my opinion, and also what we've proven is that it's not just your hips, right? Like, right. That's the glorious thing about the human body is that things move independent, right? Your upper body, your lower body. So what if my legs are switched like that? But what does that do to my upper body? Can I still square up my chest and my shoulders, and the line of recoil is hitting on a perpendicular path? Like, those are things that aren't talked about. It's just, well, stand square to the fucking rifle and blah, blah, blah. It's going to control recoil. No, it's not. Like, the position of the stock is going to control recoil. What you do with your non-firing hand is going to, there's so much more that goes into it. And
so let me ask you this, because we talk about like videos and training videos and things to put out. Do you think part of what they do, and I don't want to knock them, because again, they do put out they produce some videos to the general masses, right? Is part of what they put out so generic that if it's somebody who's like, hey, I have no skill base and I just want to shoot behind a tripod and I can start here, and these guys are saying, square yourself up behind the rifle instead of doing this. Okay, cool. That's a base. And now obviously there's nuance and we need to get into it, but is part of what they're trying to do is convey information in 30 seconds, or should the onus be on them to like, just put out longer fucking videos?
That was a 9-second video.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So I'm just wondering if part of this is just part of the marketing team. How do we, like what we talked about? I forget his name. God, the guy we had on the podcast, where part of that was all this information that was sort of dumbed down into 30-second videos, or lots of information that's dumbed down into like 1-minute videos. And I wonder how much of that is in there, but like you can't, it's hard to teach these things if you don't teach the nuance or the why. You can't just say, do this.
Yeah. I think part of it is what you said. It's a marketing gimmick of like, it's almost like clickbait, right? Like some clickbait shit.
100%.
Can get you to my YouTube page. And, but then on the other side of that, I also feel like a lot of the instructional videos that are put out are located at like an elementary level, right? You've got like elementary, you got middle school, you got high school, you got college, right? And you know that every level that you attend, right, there's certain wave tops that you're hitting. And some of the training stuff that's put out, I feel like it's at an elementary level, but their audience is wanting more than that, right?
Agreed. I think, and again, I guess maybe this isn't really, I'm not educated on their audience, but I would think that their audience is a lot more educated than maybe they give them credit for, or maybe it's not. Maybe they're a large enough company now that they do have a lot of elementary viewers, and they just kind of have to I guess pander to the lowest denominator. But I don't know. I guess the point is, it doesn't do anybody that's above an elementary level of skill set. It doesn't do them. Their videos do them no. They're pointless.
I mean, either way, thought it was a cool video to share about positioning and only seeing one side, right?
Having said that, I do wish they'd put out longer videos. They have, like, we know some of the guys, we know what they do. Like, it's not like they're not knowledgeable and they're not skilled marksmen. I don't understand why they put out these super short form videos. It could just be for the clicks. I would like to see them put out longer videos.
I think they do. I don't spend a lot of time playing around on YouTube, but I think they have some longer videos. I've only watched one or two just to kind of get a feel for what it is that they're pushing and kind of where they're at in terms of a complete understanding, right? Like, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't really understand it, right? So I watched a couple just trying to get an idea of like what they do, and ultimately what I've come down to is that what they're doing isn't bad, right? It's not the greatest shit out there, but it's not bad. There's things that I don't agree with. There's things that I feel like if you were to go out and prove this, then it would change your understanding, right? But ultimately, I think that they take guys and ladies that they sponsor and they utilize them in videos to promote their products. And it also promotes their shooters. And everybody's winning, right? Shooters getting promoted. Now they're on YouTube, and now they got all these cool videos that they didn't have to do. And the company is benefiting because they're getting content, which is driving people to use their products. And it's just a big fucking circle of marketing prowess, right? And
which they're good at.
It's not stupid on their part by any means.
No, not at all.
So, all right. So let's get into the conversation that has been busting my balls for the whole week. Okay. So you're not the only one. The whole thing started off with a person commenting and saying, why are we not aiming for the cranial vault? Why are we aiming for the spot between the eyes and the nose? Right. And it's like, well, there's areas inside there that we're intending to go for. Right now, the easiest fucking answer is you got the brainstem, you got this medulla oblongata, you've got these areas, right? Now, there's other areas such as the cerebellum, right? The cerebrum is the entire top and, big portion of the brain. The cerebellum is not as big, but it's back there. And then you've got a smaller portion, the brainstem, the medulla oblongata, which is attached to the brainstem. So asking, why are we aiming here? And like, why not? And it's like, well, there's a bigger area here that we can aim for and we can hit. And I'm like, yes, that is true. So he sent me some data, and I asked what the source of this data was, and it was from the American Sniper Association, which, you know, kind of made me like, oh, okay, fine. Like, let me look at it. Just, I like some of the content that some of the information they put out is from 2 years of collecting information from law enforcement people all over the country, right? So it's not bad, right? But as far as like the stuff that they teach, I totally don't fucking agree with.
100%. And I've been a member of the ASA since, I mean, Jesus Christ, since like 2008 or 7 or something. Like, I've been a member for a long time. So I know what they put out and what their I want to say their knowledge base is, but I know the paper you're talking about.
So when it comes to like historical things that have happened, or when it comes to like law and understanding, you know, taking a shot, not taking a shot, like repercussions, when all of that stuff, I think they do a great job.
Absolutely.
You marksmanship and techniques and understanding how precision is advancing, I don't know. It's just not their ball of wax, right?
For sure.
So he sends me a PowerPoint, and I look through the PowerPoint, and it's very educational. And then he sends me some targets that they use to train and practice and score on. And then you also sent me an article.
Now, the article I sent you. Oh, it is.
So Bartlett is ASA.
Yes.
So it's the same people. The article you sent me and the information PowerPoint that he sent me are developed by the same people. So it's only one source right now, but I still entertained it because I wanted to see where this would go. I wanted to see what the mindset was, and I wanted to see if my opinion could be changed.
Now, I also, and I haven't read it to you, but I also wanted to read you the short, I had a buddy of mine look at the paper I sent him, which is the one I sent you, and just ask for his professional opinion.
Yeah.
He's a surgeon. He's an ER doctor. He's like in the top 1% of people that would be knowledgeable on this for his knowledge of ballistic wounds, trauma, and also his tactical knowledge of what the fuck guns do. Right.
Yeah.
So it's once we're offline, I'll send this to you, but his sentiment was pretty much, this is what I asked him. I said, look, it's a discussion of whether or not, it's not a discussion of, should you aim here? Will this kill you? That's not the discussion. The discussion is, I have kind of been all in for the last 10 years of saying, hey, look, what's typically taught is this T. I disagree with it based on this, but I'm also only disagreeing with it based on this article that I read 10 years ago. And am I being one of those guys that's taking 10-year-old information and just regurgitating it as, hey, no, this is reality, right? The reason why I brought it up is because my old sniper lead texts me and he's like, hey, you fucking asshole, you know, why are you talking about this? I hate that target. I was like, whoa, slow down. What are you talking about? So me and him had the discussion again, and it's mostly based on not whether or not the ultimately whether that impact location is fatal or not. We know if it's here, you're whatever. It's whether or not we're training whether or not we're training bad habits into somebody, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit.
That's good, because based off of basically everybody that is against me right now, all I see is one giant bad habit, right? But we'll get into it because I tried to find a compromise, right? And I had to do some reaching out of my own as well. Like, where did the T box like what are we looking at? What is this T-box and who came up with it? What was the intent behind it? And started to travel down the CAG route of like some Army Special Forces, the T-box, what they were going for. Like, if you get hit in the fucking head, the chances are is that you're dying, right? Like, there's probably a high percentage that it is death, right? So
I think there needs to be some, I think that needs to be prefaced with, if you get hit in the head or the face with a high powered rifle, because that, I think that is the distinguishing difference of the conversation.
It could be, right? It could be. There's other factors to it though, right? So we got this cranial vault up here, and you look at the thickness of the skull. This is the thickest part of the skull. So if you're using a pistol and you're aiming for the cranial vault, let's say it's a 9mm, is it going to puncture the skull? It probably is, right? Depending on the angle of the person, could it glance off? I don't know, right? Terminal ballistics are such a fickle thing that it's unpredictable of what will actually happen once that projectile impacts the body, right? So you start looking at like this T-box and how it was developed in the CAG arena, and they're saying, well, you've got eyeballs, you've got a hole where your nose is in the skull, so you have all these orifices that are sunken in, versus the skull, which is a rounded concave type structure, right?
Which is similar to shooting a windshield of a car as far as angle and deflection.
Yes, right. So a lot of conversations took place trying to get to the bottom of it, but also come out of this with a, what do I actually think, and is there a middle ground to make everybody happy? Because everybody's going to have their own opinions, right? Somebody's going to go find a fucking doctor that tells them that this is the right place to shoot somebody, and it's like, how many people have you shot, doctor? And he's like, well, none. It's like, okay, so again, we go back to that terminal ballistics, and like, you don't know what's going to happen. But I see the other side of the conversation, and I'm with it, right? I understand it, even though I don't agree with it. And it's not about the body. It's not about where we're aiming. It's about the size, right? And we'll get to it here shortly. Let me share the actual clips of the brain that I was sent, right? And I think you'll enjoy this. This will be pretty cool, right? So this is basically, this is what your brain looks like, where that red line is at, taken with an MRI machine. Okay. Yep. So if you're aiming right between the eyebrows and your bullet travels in a straight line with no deflection, just bam, straight. That's the portion of the brain that you're impacting right there. Not too bad, right? All right. So now the eyeballs, you're aiming right between the eyes, right? And basically, I highlighted the areas that the small kill box that I put on our target was covering. So from the top of the eyebrows to basically the tip of the nose is where I had our kill box at. So now you've got this section of the brain, which now you still have a pretty big fucking brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty massive. You got two eyeballs, so you got those soft areas where the projectile could enter. And then this is the bridge of the nose. Can you see this part of the brain here? Like, this is the brain stem.
Yes.
But this right here is the cerebellum. So you look at the cerebellum, and it would depend on the person's brain, but from all the research that I looked into, you've got essentially 50 to 80% of the brain's nervous system in the cerebellum, right? And cerebellum controls all major motor functions. So instant immediate capacitation doesn't have to be the brainstem or the medulla oblongata, but simply destroying that cerebellum would instantly incapacitate anybody from performing a motor function, right? But there's other part of the brain that is also responsible for some motor functions as well. So it's not like if you don't shoot this area, the person will still be able to function, right? You're creating mass trauma to a part of the brain, any part of the brain, that's going to start ceasing functions, right? Again, talking about terminal ballistics and like the hydrostatic shock and how, you know, that bullet's entering and there's just like a ripple effect of energy that, you know, like, and where does that energy go? That energy is going to hit the inside of the skull and it's going to come back. And now you got waves hitting each other and you're just ripping apart this brain, right? So I don't think the fact of us aiming for the cranial vault or center of the eyes or in between the nose, like, dude's dying, right?
Yeah, I think it's all semantics at that point.
So this is the tip of the nose. Now you can see the area here is a lot smaller, okay? And going back, the cerebellum is a 4 to 4.5 to 5 inch part of the brain. It's significant, right? In terms of size.
For sure.
Okay. Whereas the brainstem, if I go back, right, the brainstem here, you might have 1 inch of target area that you could impact. Okay. And that was one of the arguments that the individual who sent this slideshow to me is like, in the slideshow, it says, why would you want to aim for the brainstem when you could aim for this big ass brain, right? And I get it. I understand, like, it's a small area. And once that projectile enters the human body, we don't know how it's going to react, right? It could go left, it could go right, high, low. I understand, okay? So ultimately, any impacts in the head, they're going to get us there, right?
Correct.
So what I wanted to show you here is, let's see, share. Uh-oh. I think I'm going to have to exit out of this.
And I do see that the updated target, that's what I was looking at, you stop it right at basically the base of the nose.
Well, we'll get to my target and what I had to do after talking with all of these people and hearing different opinions, right? I didn't want it to just be me saying, fuck you, everybody's wrong and I'm right. I wanted to, you know, actually get out there and take an honest look of what the heck, right? So here's the brain. You've got this brown section here. That is our cerebellum, right? And then you've got the brainstem, you got the medulla here, and then you've got the cerebrum up in this spot, right? And there is your cerebellum. Check, Roger?
Yep.
All right. So far, I've showed you what the brain looks like in the target box that I created, right? Now, I didn't use the T box. What I did is I went from basically, you know, the top of the eye socket to just above the tip of the nose. Like, that is where I want guys aiming. And the target box was referencing not just hitting the brainstem, but also targeting that cerebellum. And that's where the whole conversation came down to is, well, why are we not shooting for just the brain itself? Okay, got it. I'm on it. I'm with you. So here is the target that I was sent that they are utilizing for their training and qualifications and stuff like that. So what do you see here?
So that's not my favorite either. But I mean, I see them. It's essentially I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's essentially the same target, but a smaller. I'm trying to point to my screen here. I feel like it's a similar shape. I think what I have an issue with is the what I would consider the score box being so close to the outside of what would be a minimally effective impact area.
Okay. So when I looked at this target, I was like, okay, well, it's still covering the eyes. So
Correct.
The cerebellum is still covered, right?
Correct.
The only thing that it doesn't have that I added was it doesn't have the
triangle.
The triangle. And
correct.
Okay, got it. But the first thing I thought was looking at this target is like, okay, I developed a target, and the first target we came out with, it actually had the box around the triangle. And that box went from middle of the forehead down to the middle of the lips.
Correct.
I have made changes, but then I also had to go back to that target, and we'll discuss that here in a second, right? But ultimately, we have a triangle in the center of our target, which to me said we're aiming for a vital part of the face, but we are still focused on being precision riflemen, snipers. And when I looked at this target, I'm like, so basically what we've decided is that we don't care about precision. Just get your bullet somewhere in this 6-inch fucking space and you pass. Is that the general consensus? 6 inches is good?
I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but it looks like yes.
That's immediately where I started to go with this in my brain. It's like, so we have gone away from snipers need to be precise, and now we just care about them shooting people in the head, right? So that's kind of where my thought process went. And now here we are. I got to show you what I've done. So now you take our latest target. I think this is like version 3, Jeph, possibly. I've had several different variations of this. So I've come out with the civilian version, which is for just being a precision rifleman, right? And it's a 2-inch box with a 1-inch box on the inside. And it's the focus on being precise during your skill assessment. This one I've decided is going to be a law enforcement target, right? And I've played with different areas in terms of that outer box. I thought about raising up the outer box so that the triangle is the only portion that comes down over the tip of the nose. And just kind of looking at it, I wanted to keep the triangle because that is still the most vital portion of the brain.
Which I agree with.
And then you have the outer portion, right, which allows a shooter to still impact and kill the bad guy, right? I didn't bring anything down below the nose for the law enforcement target so that this target could encompass all the brain, right? The cerebellum, the cerebrum, but I didn't want to go so high up that you're running the risk of like just glancing off homeboy's fucking skin, right?
Correct.
There's got to be a certain point where you say it's got to be inside this area. So another thing that he brought up in his slideshow and in the email that he sent me is like, your target's not always going to be square to you. And I'm like, that's a good
which was going to be my next point of conversation.
Okay. So then I was like, well, shit. Why don't I just get every angle of the face? I'll keep the kill box the same. But now it doesn't matter which face that you get. You have the same kill box. The kill box has been adjusted so that you're still targeting the vital areas of the brain. But now you know, based off of training using these targets, where you should be aiming if that suspect is facing a certain direction, right? So I've got a top angle, a low angle. Let's see here. This is a side view. That's the location of those vital areas in that triangular box, right? How about the top view? Where would you aim? Because I've heard somebody say, like, if the person isn't square to you, do you still want to aim for the nose? I wanted to say, isn't it common knowledge that you don't want to aim there? But maybe it's not.
So, and I think that has been the point of contention. And I was trying to, while I'm talking to you, I'm trying to find the last email conversation between me and Dan. And for whatever reason, I can't find it. But the issue, I think, isn't with you. The issue isn't saying, hey, you have people aiming the wrong location. I think the problem is training in general has been the very first target, which is we've always shown these people to aim at the tee box. You aim right between the eyes. It's this, you're trying to aim for this. The problem is that people don't train from that 3/4 view or other views. And we've been so highly the tee, the ocular tee, or whatever you want to call it, has been such the point of target that when there's an alternate view or alternate position, snipers are still either aiming for that, which obviously now you're blowing someone's mandible off, or you're just shooting their eyes out and they're still functioning, or people are passing on a shot because they don't see the quote unquote ideal target when they have an entire head to shoot at. And I think that's sort of been the point of like the 3/4 target. I think is probably the best target I've seen that clearly illustrates, although the locations of the front on view is proper and it's correct, I think the second target, which is the 3/4 view, perfectly illustrates that it's not the eyes, it's not that location, it's simply that size of space, and no matter how you rotate it around the head, that's where you want to aim. And I think it's just a training thing where I personally, I think we just have to keep people, I think we need to train people. I almost want to take off all of the facial features and just have a blank head and rotate it so people can start looking at a target instead of facial features. Does that make sense?
It does, but aren't the facial features what help you? Like in terms of trying to aim small, miss small. If I were to look at a 3/4 side view like we are right now, I would say, you know what? I'm going to aim for the eyebrow, like the very corner of the eyebrow is going to be my aim spot. And if I can train to that standard, I'm starting to associate where these aiming points are based on how the target is facing me. Whereas if it was just a blank head, would I get the same value out of it?
So
when we're shooting at circles, where do we want to aim on a circle? We want to try
and you're right. This isn't what we talked about last time, where me personally, I need something small to aim at. I think this gets into a discussion of, let's say, specific law enforcement snipers, not necessarily a military application. So it's strictly for law enforcement, where you don't have a static head. And a lot of times you have something, let's just say it's constantly swiveling while you're waiting, right? It's swiveling, and you need to take the shot. Are you trying to concentrate on the eyebrow? Or are you trying to get in the center of that rotating sphere and take the shot when you have it? I think that's the question. And I don't disagree with you, and I may not even agree with myself. This is just that's just the question of, are we aiming for features, or are we trying to aim for what could be considered a rotating ball, and who cares where the features are?
I think it's both. I think it's
correct.
Understanding where that shot needs to take place. And so you're giving yourself something to aim at, but it is rotating, it is moving. And, ultimately you're still trying to get that shot in the head, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if shooting at just a blank head is going to give you that.
No, I don't. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying more of like, that's like my knee jerk would be like, it'd be cool just to rip all those off and you're just aiming for, like, it's almost just a globe, right? And you're just aiming for the center of globe. Now you still need the features. You still need all that. that's just kind of a discussion. Like in this view perfectly, right? My worry is that through a training scar of someone who's always training a face-on view of the tee box, that in this view, that's where that team guy that trains once a month, who's on deployment, on a whatever, right? And that's the shot he takes. And where does he aim? He aims right between the eyes.
Yeah.
And it glances off his face. That's the worry.
So that's been the biggest eye opener for me, is not that I have any plans on changing the small area that I want guys to aim for. I still want them focused on being skilled marksmen, applying precision shots, but it did open up that we need to focus on shooting at targets. You know, when it comes to taking a life or saving people or being a first responder, like having other looks outside of just this fucking guy looking straight at you, right? But training to a higher standard.
Yeah, and Dan, one of the things he talked about in the email was like, look, he doesn't in his trainings anymore, he does not use face-ons whatsoever anymore because of the potential training issue. And I'm like, okay, cool, that makes sense. That was his workaround. That's how he figured it out. I don't disagree with that. But that's been his fix for this because of that. So I think it's a great discussion. Not only for, these targets, which when I did send these for Dan to look at, and he's like, much better. Obviously for him, it's like, yeah, not perfect, but still they're like way better than the first ones. But I think that it's a great discussion for training, regardless of target.
Yeah. And we could get into the psychology part on another episode, but sometimes I wonder what the psychological effect is of not having a face, right? Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, what have we been bred, as Americans, right? This may not be true for the rest of the world, but what have Americans been bred since birth? Is that it's wrong to kill people.
Mm-hmm. It's wrong to point a gun at somebody.
Absolutely, right?
Yep.
So if you start to take away the human features, then when that person gets into a real situation, he's overwhelmed with anxiety, fear, all of these emotions are just hitting him all at once. Like, holy fuck, I'm about to do what I've always been told I'm not supposed to do. Right.
I have a quick story on that. I got a good buddy of mine who, long time, he spent like 15 years in the military. He did security for some outfit, but he's a big time hunter, and he used to go to Africa a lot, and he's killed a lot of critters. He's put a lot of shit on the ground, and he did this hunt in, I forget what part of Africa, but a couple of days of the hunt is culling problem baboons. So they go out and they kill these baboons that are just attacking people, right? Yeah. And the first day he got baboons into his scope, he could not shoot the baboon because it looked like a human being.
Yeah. And
it was eye-opening, where I was like, wow, he eventually did, but it took him half the day to be able to convince himself to shoot a baboon. So I 100% understand what you're saying, which is if you're not training to shoot these targets, which are human being targets, like, it is what it is. Your job is to kill somebody.
Yeah.
You have to understand that first. If you're not training that and you're just training globes, then yeah, you may have a hard time pulling that trigger when you need to.
And I think it's a different psychological effect from your door kickers or your self-defense, right? Because at that point, you're fighting for your life, or you're going into a house, you just kick the door open, and now, a threat presents itself and you're reacting to a threat. Whereas if you're a sniper, you're shooting someone who is not a specific life or death threat to yourself. And it's different. It's completely different, right?
100%. And I've said that before, which is you're eliminating a threat. What you're doing is you're trying to kill somebody who is no threat directly to you.
Exactly.
Which is a tough thing for some people to wrap their head around.
So it's been a pretty good rabbit hole to go down, right? I've enjoyed it. You saw how the target has changed and, you know, been modified to suit the thought process behind some of the stuff that you shared with me, some of the stuff that Doug shared with me, and that email. Ultimately, I'm still looking for that aim small. I want you to have precision. And if you don't like the target, you can put your own fucking box in there, right? But it shouldn't be 6 inches big. I'm still 100% against having a 6-inch target and slapping asses and giving high fives just because you put a round in a 6-inch box at 100 yards. Like, that's not professional enough for me. For the military target, I had to go back to the original, right? The original was you got that triangle that encompassed between the eyes and the bridge of the nose, and then you had a 4-inch box around it centered. So that covered from the forehead down to the middle of the lips. And that's where this whole conversation originally started, is like, why are we only shooting for this part? Why are we not encompassing the brain? Okay, got it. Let's look into it. But then presenting this to some of my military buddies and some of the guys that I'm training here and some of the other instructors, they're like, well, what if he's wearing a helmet? I'm like, fuck. Okay. So then I got to go back and say, like, that's another thing on the military side, and not just military. What if you're a law enforcement officer who is presented with a suspect who's wearing a fucking helmet?
Yeah.
It poses a whole nother challenge. So for the military guys, I'm going back to the original target box because they're expected to be shooting people wearing military gear. At least that's the standard that we're training to.
Correct. And additionally, I think that one for you, you also have to quantify a 4-inch target, a 4 MOA at 100 yards, an 8 MOA at 50 yards, or whatever you're going to print it out at. Whereas the other target we're modifying is hard to scale that exactly for a qualification / training purpose.
Which one?
The original one, right? So if you take the original target and you modified it, then it's also hard to quantify, because what we talked about before is you made that 4-inch square exactly 4 inches because you know exactly what the MOA is at 100 yards or whatever, versus the new one, which isn't exactly a 4-inch square. It's got round edges. It's because it's both a qualification and a training target. You need a measurable square so it's fair for everybody, or it's a universal. So it's measurable, I guess.
Yeah. So for the new target, it does have some rounded parts in there just to kind of encompass vital parts of where you could place a shot and be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I was coming up with this new target, I was thinking, okay, like, what if a guy does hit like right here and it's like just outside of my square box? And it's like, well, it's still kill shot, right? I don't want the sniper or the law enforcement guy to get maximum points, but I still want him to get a point if it was a bad shot or he was unstable or whatever the case was, right? So I did make it a little more rounded in terms of what's realistic. But, I mean, you could shoot all 20 rounds at that outer box, which is still approximately 4 MOA.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to get max points, right? Because you're not demonstrating that you have the capability to apply precision to your skill set. You're just demonstrating that you can shoot a fucker in the head. And that's it.
Yeah. And that goes back to being competent versus being, proficient or being a master at the skill. Like, there's a lot of people that are competent and they can get the job done, but they're not all very good at it.
Yeah. But I did like where this all went because it forced us to look deeper and keep that open mind. And ultimately what we came out with was pretty good target that focuses on all things of everybody involved in this argument or this debate now has something injected into our target, right? Their thought process or their theory behind it, right? Well, we also came away with, we need targets that show different angles of the face. And so we did it, right? And I like where it finished. And maybe we're not finished, right? I've been thinking about that target specifically, like I said, raising that outer box so that any shots below the eyes that aren't in the center of the face are a miss. What are your thoughts on that? Let me pull that target up again. So do you understand what I'm saying, Jeph?
No, let me see the target. I'm trying to read the last trying to see if the last message I got from my buddy is on the same lines here.
All right, so I'll share this with you. There you go. Check it out. Can you see it?
There we go.
Okay. So you've got the face, you've got that outer 4-point box, and you've got the inner 5-point triangle, right?
Correct.
5-point triangle is basically covering the brainstem, where that's the bottom of the triangle, because the brainstem is so small. But then you've got the cerebellum, which is a lot wider, all those major motor functions, okay? But the bottom edge of the box, the outer box here, I was considering, Jeph, moving that up to just below the eye line so that if you hit from anywhere below the eye line all the way up to the top of the forehead in this outer box, you get 4 points. But keeping the triangular box down to the tip of the nose because of the things that are in that space.
So here's the only part of that, which is, I will say, I may not necessarily agree with, is that you see right where your cursor is, right where that your T is at the very tip of his nose.
Yep.
If you shoot there, you get max points. If I miss that by a 1/4 inch down, I no longer get any points.
That's
so
correct.
the issue, I think one of the things that was brought up was that the max point, here's a perfect shot, is so close to that was a horrible shot, you get no points.
Correct.
So
there has to be a standard somewhere, right? And if you want to have a realistic cranial vault impact area, then if we lower that outer box down so that even if you don't hit the tip of the nose, but you still get some points, then all we're doing is allowing for more sloppiness.
Correct. I was more discussing whether or not we either make, again, this is where we start getting into, splitting hairs. My only idea was actually,
if you're aiming at this target, are you really aiming for the tip of the nose, the smallest portion of the 5-point box that you can get?
Exactly. My thought was actually making that inner triangle smaller and moving it up a 1/4 inch, so there's no all or nothing towards the bottom, just discussion points. Actually making that inner portion further away from the soft palate, mandible, this isn't a good shot location.
Yeah.
That's all.
All good points, man. All good points. So probably still play around with this, try to see what other versions we can come out with and what we might settle on. I know I've got some departments I want to send it to. San Diego, LA Sheriffs. I think I got some LAPD guys that I want to send it off to. Riverside for sure. And get their feedback on it, right? I've already sent it out to a bunch of Marine units to have them try it out. I've run it myself, and it's not overly difficult. So, I mean, I like where it's going, though.
So do I.
I don't think the finished
And here's what I like. I like that I like that we're having these discussions, because one of the things Dan said was like, God, Tyler's going to hate me after this. I was like, no, we love this shit. Like, this is the whole point of this.
I fucking hate you.
The whole point of this is so we, as I hate using this word, community, get better and progress forward. But if we just put some information out and Tyler was like, no, this is how we do it, I'm not going to listen to you, then this is pointless.
I think it's good to have differing opinions, but ultimately, I think the right answer is going to settle at each person and what they value, right?
Exactly. What's your goal?
I value the most of having snipers that are capable of making precision shots. So that's where I lean into heavily is your fundamentals have to be sound. I want you to be able to make this precision shot at this specific area. And then the second area that I value is it anatomically correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get differing opinions that say like, well, we should also be encompassing the cranial vault. And it's like, okay, let's think about it. Let's look at it. You know what? I agree with you. After doing all the research, I don't disagree. I think that it's a good idea. But in order for me to maintain that certain amount of precision I'm expecting from the guys, something has to give, right?
Exactly. And I think
we move
I think it's a great
up, then you don't get points for shooting them in the lower face. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. If you do it in real life, they're still dead.
Yeah. And it's a great point to make that it depends on what you value out of training, right? Your job is to make sure that you create the most highly capable precision rifle shooters you can. Whereas from a small agency law enforcement division, you may find that their main focus is to create the largest room for success with the least amount of training. So how do we do this while throwing a large net over their training and saying, look, just aim for the cranial vault, because in the 2 months, at the one time you go to the range every 2 months, I can tell you to aim for the center of that big thing on top of those shoulders, whatever it is, right? I think figuring out what is most important for you in your training is what you should do, as long as we all stay open to the discussion, right? As long as we all stay open to what having these discussions, the takeaway is what works best for you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So pretty good discussion there in terms of like what we all learned coming out of this.
Definitely.
Moving on, got a couple videos here. Trying to figure out where they went, but they were sent to me by, you remember a while back I said, we had a guy who messaged in and said like, I'm having problems with this. And so I replied to him and he made the adjustment in training, right? And then he had another question or another problem. And then he went back and made the adjustment after we talked about it. And ultimately, what he was trying to do was win a fucking match.
Was this the guy that won the match?
Yeah. So this guy won the match, right? And then he won another one after that. So he's now got 2 under his belt, dude. And he's just kicking ass and taking names. So I sent this target out to the Patreon guys when we first came out with that precision ear qual that was built for civilians, but still shooting at a face. And he ran it and fucking kicked ass, dude. I think he dropped like 1 or 2 shots, maybe. He walked away with like a 98 out of 100. So
he fucking smoked.
Doing a good job. So he sent another video in, and this video, he's asking if we could evaluate how he could get better, what he's trying to program into his body now, or into his abilities, is dialing. So he wants to get better at dialing. All right. So Let's just open this video up here and we'll kind of look at what he's doing, and then I'll talk about what I see, right? But his biggest issue is that he's not consistent. Sometimes he'll dial before he moves, sometimes he'll dial after, and then other times it looks like he forgets to dial. So here's one spot.
God, I can't be a dial before you move guy.
Why?
I can't do it because then I forget if I dialed by the time I get there.
Oh my gosh, man. I mean, ultimately it doesn't matter, right? So here he goes. He's got his rifle up, using tripod as a rear support. Boom, he's on it, takes his shots, cycles, takes his shot, right? So now he brings his rifle down, and now he's dialing. After he moved his position, he dials. Now he's on target, same position, just a different level, shoots, gets his impacts, shoots, right? Now watch, dial. What did he do?
He went, stopped, and then had to go back.
So he now chose to dial before he moved, right? So now he's on his third position. He's going to take his shots, cycle, take a shot, cycle his bolt. But what's your guess? He going to, he moved positions.
Afterwards, okay.
Now he's dialing, right? So he's dialing after he moved positions on that run.
He's also a right-hand dialer, which isn't my favorite, but whatever.
So you got to look at what position that you're in.
I get that.
I agree.
But he's a left-hand dialer there.
I know. So that is the biggest consistency point right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Out of all the critiques that I have for him, and I haven't even gone over the video to look at like what he may be doing right or wrong. But as far as dialing, his initial question of like, I want to get better at dialing and I'm having problems, it's all comes down to habit.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is, right? Is like forcing yourself to do something the same way every time, right? And if you really want to get great at it, then you got to punish yourself when you fuck it up, right? Whatever that, I'm not saying like, you do that weird shit where you like whip yourself with a chain or something, but like something that forces you to do it right because there's a penalty if you don't, right? It could be push-ups. It could be, you got to put money in a jar or like whatever the case is. I don't know. That's on you. But you got to build these habits where, as soon as you're done with that position, you're dialing, right? So sometimes the position will force you to use a different hand. But for the most part, like you're in position, okay? And in the military, Jeph, we're taught that in the prone, we got our non-firing hand, controls the rear bag, holds the buttstock, and we're dialing with our right hand, right? But then as I've, progressed over the years and now I'm shooting from a tripod, or now, if my firing hand is the primary control point for that gun, then all I got is my left hand to make dialing adjustments, right? So you really have to go with one, you want to build some consistency, but it also needs to make sense, right?
100%.
The biggest thing is you need to make a decision. Do I want to dial before I move, or do I want to dial after I get to my spot, right? And you said your personal, you would rather dial once you're in your position. That way you know that you didn't double dial or you forgot or whatever it is. For me personally, I want to shoot my stage, dial, move to the next position, and all I'm focused on is building a good spot, getting in my position, and then once I'm on target, once my eye is looking through the scope, I don't have to break my position to dial anymore. I'm already there. I've already made the adjustment. So that is the first personal decision that you have to make is, am I going to dial before or after I move? And then you just got to beat it into yourself, right?
Yeah, and there's not necessarily a wrong answer, right? Like I, for me, it's whatever habit you create, just stick with it, right? It's part of your process.
Yeah.
So whatever habit you may shave a tenth, I may shave 2/10 by dialing first, right? But if that 2/10 costs me 2 seconds because I forgot to dial, then it didn't save me any time.
Yeah.
Or I dropped a shot because I thought I dialed and I didn't. So it's whatever your habit is what's most important for you just to create and stick to.
Yeah. And that's the important part, is you got to build that habit, right? And there's many different training methods, such as like the punishment method, right? But there's the also like, just dry firing in your house. You set up, 3 different little stickers or aiming points in your garage, and you're looking at this one, you're looking at that one, you're looking at this one. And, every time you get to a different spot, you're changing your dial, right? So you can look at it as easy as that, but ultimately habits are what's going to drive that train and set you up for success.
Yeah, I think a good punishment, which is what I do, is I'll dry fire, and if I screw up, I'll load around in my house, I'll blow a hole in my wall, and I'll have to fix it. I think be a man and do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Have you ever shot a live round in your house on accident?
No, but I did shoot a live round through my buddy's barn on accident, and the only reason why it was okay was because I pointed it in the right direction. I checked the bore, and I was like, never pull the trigger unless it's pointed in a safe direction. And I dropped the hammer in a live round because my finger didn't reach in there, and I shot a fucking hole in his barn. And I will never forget that day.
Awesome. That is epic, dude. That's a good story. One day I'll tell you about my story, but that day is not today.
Why am I frozen?
I don't know. You got the best look on your face.
I don't like it. Whatever.
All right, man. Hey, this is a good conversation. We're going to put these law enforcement targets on the website and let you guys have fun with it. If you print them and you have some feedback, right? I'm all about the feedback, but you got to come at me with some purpose that makes sense behind what you're asking to change.
I also want to point out that you cannot bitch about what we're putting out unless you watch the podcast and listen to the discussions. I get so many people that say, well, what about this? And what about this? And my answer is always watch the fucking podcast. Listen to the podcast.
Yeah. If you listen, if you watch, then you'll get a better understanding of where our headspace is at.
Exactly.
Be part of the conversation. We're all about conversations over here. So,
all right, buddy. Well, I think that was a great combo. I'm glad we dove a little deeper into it. It's not going to be the last time, I'm sure, but I'm glad. I like the progress that we made on it, and I really do like the new targets a lot.
Yeah, 100%, man. So we'll get these up on the website. You'll be able to download them here pretty soon. It'll come with instructions for the law enforcement guys. It still encompasses a lot of drills that are pertinent in terms of evaluating and testing a skill set, and are you capable on a bare minimum level, right? And then we'll put the civilian version up on the website as well. I know it's not been available to the public, but we will make it available to the public. I've had some people ask me for it. So, Jeph, appreciate your time, man. For everybody else, go check out our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, all the stuff that Jeph normally says. And, appreciate you guys sticking with us and following us on this journey. And if you have any questions, comments, please hit us up. Let me know. You can email me, Tyler@maxordinate.com, and you can email Jeph@maxordinate.com. And that's JEPH. Jeph.
Jeph.
All right, buddy. I'll catch you later.
All right, later.